time, and so we'll certainly miss him. So.
Okay, I would entertain a motion to approve 3.1 through 3.12.2.1 Michael Hendricks.
After the dots, I will make a motion to approve this.
Mr. Booker?
I'll second.
Mr. Raymer seconded. Any discussion or questions? I will add, we're just approving Shelley Leifer as the assistant business manager yet. Her contract has not been completed. It's not in your package. That will be at the March meeting. With that, we will do a roll call vote. Mr. Hensley?
Yes.
Mr. Shaw?
Yes.
Mr. Esposette?
Yes.
Mr. Brubaker?
Yes.
Mr. Booker?
Yes.
Mr. Raymer?
Yes.
Motion carries 7-0. Would entertain a motion for the approval of building rental that Superintendent Whelan recommended for the Squire Volleyball Club, 3.2. Mr. Brubaker made a motion. Mr. Raymer seconded. Any questions?
What age group is this? Just kind of wondered.
That's all right. Give me a second. I did have it. Oh, maybe I made it disappear. No. Actually, it's their club volleyball, so I'm not sure what age ranges that covers.
Okay.
So.
And just for the record, their fee was waived because it's a Squire club and they're looking at around 300 people, so.
Good. That's what I was kind of wondering, the numbers we're getting. So.
Any other questions or discussion? Mr. Raymer?
Yes.
Mr. Booker?
Yes.
Mr. Brubaker?
Yes.
Mr. Esposette?
Approved.
Mr. Shaw?
Yes.
Mr. Hensley?
Yes.
And I vote yes. 7-0. Okay. Superintendent Whelan, 3.3, please.
Okay, so we had the Regional Science Olympiad competition about 2 weeks ago, and we ended up qualifying 2 of our teams for the state competition, which is held at Purdue University on March 11th and 12th. And so the reason we're approving this or recommending a approval is because it is an overnight trip, and so they're on campus for 2 days. It's a great experience for the students. And, you know, I commend Mr. Chenworth and his support staff for all the work they've put into this. So this is a huge accomplishment. It is something that Manchester Community Schools have had teams qualify before. But, you know, we're looking at close to 30 kids going down there for this event and chaperones. And so we're looking at, you know, we're going to be looking at raising some funds relatively soon as well to help fund this trip. But I think it's a great opportunity for our kids, and I commend our faculty who have put a lot of time in as well.
I'd entertain a motion to approve the Science Olympiad trip overnight.
All motion.
Mr. Hensley made a motion. Second.
I'll second. I'll second.
Mr. Brubaker, any discussion or questions?
Any idea how many they're hoping to take for chaperones, like 30 kids?
I think it was a 8-to-1 ratio is what they were looking at, I believe.
Awesome. Again, not a make or break, just was curious.
Any other discussion or questions? Okay, I vote yes. Mr. Hensley?
Yes.
Mr. Shaw?
Yes.
Mr. Esposette?
Yes.
Mr. Brubaker?
Yes.
Mr. Booker?
Yes.
Mr. Raymer?
Yes.
Okay, motion carries 7-0. Superintendent Whelan, 3.4.
Oh, I'll actually turn that over to, are you good to talk about this?
It's just we have a lot of outdated equipment that's been set aside. Oh, sorry. Set aside. It's been stored in different areas, specifically right now I'm looking at the kitchen. Over here in this building, there are, an example, there's 3 electric stoves. We don't know how long they've been in there. We don't know their age. So rather, those items I specifically want to go ahead and sell for scrap I don't want to auction because of the age of the wiring in them. They could become a fire hazard. I don't want to open us up to liability. All the equipment that could be sold to be reused, we will sell. We will dispose of it in the best way we can as far as getting the best price to get anything we can reuse, or in any items that we may reuse, we will go ahead and hold on to. But these are kitchen stoves. They aren't food service. They probably came out of the junior high kitchen, or junior high home ec rooms is what. But there's a lot of assorted. Becky's gone through and marked the items that she could possibly reuse in another kitchen in the project. But anything that's junk, we really just want to open up the space for storage.
Well, I guess I concur with the scrapping the stoves. I mean, that could be a real liability. Do we have a policy that anybody's aware of for disposing? I mean, do we do sealed bid on stuff that might be of use to someone? I mean,
Other school districts will often do an auction, but that opens up for items that could be sold. If we knew the age of the stoves and it felt like they were something, and some other things like desks. Sometimes people may sell desks at an auction, but I didn't look in our policies. But these items, everything that I'm looking at getting rid of are just basic scrap value that Jack or Jay can run down to the iron and metal place, get a few dollars for personal property sale, and we'll put it back in our books.
okay.
Just for clarification, there is a state statute on this, so if
Okay.
it's junk, you can junk
Yeah.
it, but if the items that you're going to sell are more than $1,000, you just have to advertise, but you can
Right.
do public sale or private sale.
Okay.
So in other words, if we thought we could get more money for a lawnmower that we were trading it in, we could put it up for sealed bid,
Yeah,
or a vehicle,
yeah.
or a bus.
I don't know if vehicles and buses count under that statute, but
Yeah. That
Okay.
would be-
this type of personal property would.
Okay, so you're just asking for permission to get
Permission.
rid of the junk, throw the
Permission,
trash
and
away?
specifically, one of the items that we're talking about, it's not in this storage right now, but the scorer's table at the high school. Those were donated, I put it in the memo. The scorer's tables were donated to the school a number of years ago. I don't know the age, and Tyson wasn't sure either. We've had replacements donated. He wants to do a silent auction for one of them. Maybe somebody will buy it for their
Man cave?
man cave, thank you. Or their garage, or wherever, but somebody may want one, and we're gonna do a silent auction, and that money would go back into the athletic fund. So, again, we would be selling anything that's usable. The other one is going to MIS to be used, so.
Okay,
Mr. France, you said $1,000. Was that total or per item?
If it's more than one item and it's over $1,000, you just have to advertise whatever you're
Okay.
doing.
Okay.
And describe the property that's gonna be sold.
Okay, that's fine. Okay.
And he would like to just be able to talk that up at the following home events yet in the gym before we're done using that. So that's one reason why we brought it now.
okay, I'd entertain a motion to approve 3.4, the MCS memo regarding outdated equipment for disposal.
So moved.
Mr. Raymer moved,
I will second.
Mr. Bucher seconded. Any further discussion or questions?
Yeah, something to think about. Who can sell? Does it have to go through the central office, or I'm just trying to get in front of this a little bit. This gets passed and the teacher has an item, they don't
It
need.
has to run through it would need to run through central office, because any of the equipment within the school corporation is owned by the school corporation. And the scorer's tables were kind of questionable, because were they really donated to the school corporation, or were they still really, so that was a questionable. We just wanted to cover it. But anything, if a teacher has an item, that would need to run by central office before we would want to obsolete something.
Perhaps we should look at another policy.
Yeah, that's what we can look at that in policy, and I don't know, there may be something in there, and hidden in the deal, but, yeah, I'm kind of get your concern, so.
Okay, any further discussion or questions? Okay, we have a motion to approve it. Mr. Raymer,
Yes.
Mr. Booker,
Yes.
Mr. Brubaker,
Yes.
Mr. Espacet,
Yes.
Mr. Shaw,
Yes.
Mr. Hensley,
Yes.
and I vote yes. Motion carries 7-0. Okay, back in August, we revised our reopening plan in regards to the ESSER 3.
That's correct, it was ESSER 3, right?
Yeah. At that time, we said 6 months in, we were gonna look at it, and here we are. I know, been a lot of work put into this, so at this point, I'll turn this over to Superintendent Whelan.
So, like Mr. Turflinger said, this is something that we're required to do as far as reopening plan, and then also every 6 months readdress it. So that 6 months, the last one we approved was back on September 23rd, so that was coming up. So we started looking at what revisions we might be working on. And a big part of this is we've been working with the, Department of Health countywide, also take guidance from Department of Health from Indiana, and then also from the CDC. And so we certainly look to what their recommendations are as some guidance. And so I, had talked with my leadership team to start to make some revisions. And then just this past week, the Indiana Department of Health released some very much modified guidelines and recommendations for schools in particular. And so much of this plan is reflection of what their recommendations were. So a big part of, and this is one of the main slides showing kind of where the direction that our school is headed. We'll still require the positive tests to be reported of both students and staff, and those should go to the school nurse along with documentation. A big part of this, and this is where the state had said that if someone tests positive, they're asking that they notify their close contacts. Well, when we're talking in a school setting, expecting students to notify their close contacts is not very realistic. And so what we would like to do is continue to be able to notify those close contacts, just so the parents are aware that, hey, your student was potentially exposed at school, so that they can take the necessary steps if they are like, well, maybe we don't go to grandma's this weekend or something like that, or if they are susceptible, to illness, they can take those additional steps. So we're just looking at an awareness factor. We're not looking at quarantining or anything like that of close contacts. It's just notifying. So if a student tests positive or an adult, notify the school nurse. That person stays at home for at least 5 full days as that quarantine. Then students or staff who have been isolated may return on day 6 as long as they've been fever-free for at least 24 hours without medications. And then once they do return, we're asking that they wear a mask for those days 6 through 10 to help reduce any possible transmission that they still might be prone to. And then people who are confirmed to have COVID-19, regardless of their vaccination status or symptoms, are encouraged to isolate. Once again, in line with what the new recommendations are from the Department of Health, we will not be quarantining students who were in close contact with a positive individual. We also will not require a negative test or a doctor's note for them to return to school. And just like with any other illness, a student needs to be fever-free for at least 24 hours without the use of medicine to return. So these are some of the major changes to what our current plan is, and that is reflective of what the Department of Health is recommending in regards to grades K to 12 school. So moving forward also, face coverings, we're looking, my recommendation is that we move to recommended or optional for masks. However, as far as the state or the federal mandate still goes, they will be required of students and staff when they were on one of our school buses. Now, one of the kind of alterations I would like to make to what was posted on the website is what I have here. So that requirement for wearing masks on buses had to do with based on this federal mandate. If and when this federal mandate gets lifted, then at that point I'd recommend that that mask requirement be removed. So I know that wasn't part of what was posted on the website, but since I was recommending it based on this federal mandate, once that mandate is no longer present, then I'd recommend that we no longer require them, that we make them recommended and optional on buses as well. If a student or staff has medical issues, they need to submit that, and we will take that into consideration with masking on the buses. Much of the rest of it is verbatim what we had from the previous plan that was approved before school started, but then reinforced on September 23rd. We're still going to encourage social distancing. All the disinfecting measures that we currently have in place, we would still continue with those. The hand cleaning, once again, we're going to make sure that we're providing hand sanitizer. We're going to encourage students to wash their hands with soap and water. All of these are just good personal hygiene pieces that should be prevalent no matter COVID or not COVID. So we just want to continue with those good habits. Transportation, once again, the face mask will be required until that federal mandate expires or gets lifted. But we want to encourage all the same thing. We want assigned seats so that if a student does test positive, we can make those other parents aware that your student might have been, possibly exposed to someone who tested positive with COVID. One of the things about buses, this is probably the closest our students are to each other throughout the school day. If we have 3 to a seat and they're on there for an extended period of time, that is pretty close contact with them. So once again, we still have drivers sanitizing the buses in between routes. Food service will continue to follow the same precautions that we have been. The Department of Health continues to provide guidance for food service, and this was even prior to COVID, so they've always provided supports and recommendations for what we're doing in there. The teaching and learning, still a lot of it is encouraging good personal hygiene, encouraging social distancing when it doesn't have a negative impact on the learning piece. We still have visitors need to be, report to the front office, and they will be restricted to the front office, which was once again, pretty much a common thing prior to COVID even. And our drinking fountains will continue to remain off, and we encourage students to use water bottles. So all of this stuff is still in line with what we have been doing all this time. The field trips, depending on the places that we go, they might have a mask requirement, and so we are beholden to whatever that location is. And so, once again, this is all the same wording that we've used in the previous 2 plans that you guys have approved. Same thing, student and staff illness, once they get to the office, they'll be isolated until someone can come and pick them up. And once again, these are the same symptoms that we've been looking for all of this time. And so it's none of this part is really new. It's just mainly that first slide regarding the new recommendations from the Department of Health. And so I guess what my recommendation is to approve this revision to the reentry plan. The only difference from what you have compared to what I'm recommending is in regards to masks on buses, that once that federal mandate is removed, that then masks will be optional or recommended on buses as well.
Okay, can I get a motion to approve the superintendent's recommendation to the reentry plan as presented?
So moved.
Second.
Who made the motion?
Roger,
Oh, okay, Raj, you made Mr. Shaw made the motion. Who seconded? And Mr. Raymer seconded.
Got a question. Were we
Sure,
supposed to take-
discussion and question period.
Were we supposed to take public comments, questions on
Before we motion.
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear you. Pull your mic down.
Were we supposed to take public comments or questions on this before?
That opportunity was at the beginning of the meeting, and then it's at the end of the meeting.
All right. When this was up the last time, we did.
Yeah, no, well, this isn't a hearing this time. Okay, so we got a motion and a second on the table. Questions, discussion?
yeah, did you mention anything about testing?
The, no, I didn't, I'm sorry. Yeah, so there was a lot more to what the Department of Health rolled out that doesn't necessarily fall into our plan. But they are going to make free tests available to schools that we are able to send home with parents. And so it'll be free to schools. We can send those home to parents. They're at-home tests. So if we do have some parents that either, they're concerned about either symptoms or that their student was exposed, that's something that the state is going to be making available to us. And so they're sending out a questionnaire, I think, next week to school districts, and Mrs. Heyer has already, she will complete that and say that we want to be a part of that program, and she's happy to continue to facilitate that part. So, she'll be the one sending letters home to parents if there was a close contact, and we'll make sure that we include that in there once we have tests available, that'll be available as well.
So we can have discussion now?
Yeah, that's what this period is
So
for.
that's one thing to me is I'm watching industry, I'm watching the medical industry make billions, trillions of dollars off of this, and that burden of people want tests, the federal money and the state money that's been allocated to this shouldn't be a burden on the parents if they want to use a test, whether you believe them in or not. Personally, I've been vaccinated, I've had COVID now, I'm not satisfied with medical care or anything about this, So one thing is to keep, what we can do, the best thing we can do is when people are sick to stay home. That's the way you control this disease, to be honest with you. And I don't, that's good that burden shifted with all the money that's been distributed over this whole thing. So, that'd be my discussion item on that, so.
Did you cover this? The screening and taking a
Oh, it was on there, but I didn't go over it very much. So, and Mike, I agree with you. I mean, that self-screening or parent screening, or even teacher screening when someone's in our classrooms, it is a huge part of it. And we want students in our buildings. And it used to be that, hey, even when I wasn't feeling well, a lot of times I'd come to work. But, considering, kind of, what's transpired over the last 2 years, we've taken away, it used to be that we had things in our handbook that, if a kid misses 4 days, they basically get in trouble. I mean, we've removed all of that because, if a kid is sick, if a teacher is sick, then they should be, staying at home and taking care of themselves and hopefully not transmitting whatever it is that they have. So, that self-screening part is going to continue to be a huge part of what we're doing. And then, as if a student is here and a teacher notices something, then we'll have them report to the nurse's station and deal with it from there. So.
Now, the other part of that is we still, there's still a shortage of care and especially for single parents out there, So I look at some of this, we don't have a legislative update, but I look at some of the things going on and I really wonder about what our focus is sometimes. And you see the money that's been distributed, to this COVID. And again, here we are talking about masks and stuff again. So, it just kind of really starting to rub me the wrong way of seeing where the funds are going and how many funds are going there. And then when you're vaccinated, you still get COVID then you worry about, did we change the definition of vaccination, through this whole process? Because, usually you get vaccinated, it's a pretty good deal. So, I've been I got a little mark on my arm for polio when I was a kid, right? So I'm just, at times, Robert and I took a little trip down to Indianapolis, kind of got buffed a little bit, didn't get to talk to our representative, Snow. He was kind of busy with constituents from Warsaw, Senator Zay, he was busy in caucus, I guess, so one of the things about this is we have to maintain a community voice on these things, and I look at this and we're school board members and, all along we've heard, oh, you're gonna make the decisions on this, but every turn there's somebody trying to make different decisions on this. So I'll be happy when March 18th gets here where, and I understand, following these directives from, the experts, if there are experts on this disease or whatever, but again, it's really time to assert, community values and the feeling of the community and stuff on this. So I appreciate what you've done with this, so.
Any other comments from the board or questions?
Thanks for your efforts, Kyle.
Absolutely, and I appreciate my principals meeting with me as well as MA Hire. This certainly isn't any of our favorite topic of conversation. There's been a lot of people from custodians, bus drivers, everybody else who have played a big role in, keeping our kids as safe as we possibly can. So it's a lot of extra efforts. We have a lot of great people here, so I appreciate it.
Anybody else? I got just a couple of things. One, because the state stuff falls off tomorrow, I don't want to make the assumption, because it doesn't say in here anywhere, this takes effect tomorrow if it's approved?
Correct, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay, so we got that on the record. The other concern that I'm just going to throw out there is, before I call this vote, unless this leads to more discussion, the state's done away with contact tracing. The state's done away with quarantining. I think it would be
The dashboard.
Yeah, the dashboard. I kind of get the piece about having the parents report it, but I would like the superintendent and MA to meet with Mr. France and make sure we're not on a slippery slope here under HIPAA laws when we start notifying parents with the dashboard, the quarantine, and all these other pieces being absent.
Sure.
I could see that leading to a problem. Do you have a comment, Mr. France?
I mean, the way all that worked, to my knowledge, was that personally identified information was taken out. So I don't see a huge issue, but I'll take a closer look.
And when we do notify, there's not specifics given. So, at the high school level especially, I mean, we're not saying it was this one classroom or at lunch it happened. It's just at some point during the day, and it might have been on the bus. It might have been, it's just making a parent aware that they were in close contact. And so, once again, it's a step. And I think the Department of Health outlined things very well with kind of the direction things are heading, and saying here's why we don't have the same level of concern as what we did. But I do think, looking out for our students and also the families that they're going home to, that just making them aware that, hey, pay attention to the symptoms. I mean, if there's nothing, there's nothing, but it allows them to make an informed decision instead of it just being going about their business as normal. But I don't want to break the law either. I'll certainly consult with him.
I just want to make sure we don't get ourselves out there on a slippery slope. The notice, in my mind, has to be very generic.
Sure. Yeah. And it is.
It doesn't say you were. You could have been, and we have a test kit available if you'd like it. Is just to err on the side of caution.
Absolutely.
Any other comments or questions?
Yeah, just one more question. Are we still currently doing the one-way hallways?
We currently, that is in there, but that is not in this piece.
So that'll go away?
Yeah. When we were talking, back when we were working on the initial plan, we had talked about different times for that. And it was one that as we move away from mass, that was not in there.
And just clarification, the social distance encouragement is still in effect for lunch, correct?
Yep.
Okay.
When possible, we're going to continue to socially distance. So I know that there were some academic pieces that got put on hold because we were trying to stay socially distanced. But, we want to make sure that, moving forward, we're going to socially distance as best we can. If it interferes with the academic things, we've done a lot less, partner learning or group learning, and we're trying to make sure that we implement that, when it's the best when it's the best interest of academics and learning, then we'll do it. Otherwise, they should still, and it's interesting because, I've had this conversation with quite a few people. It's like, think about all the things that we can reduce transmission of. It's keeping the space, and I know as a teenager at one point, I liked my space anyhow, so I'd prefer sitting a little bit further away from people, so.
Okay, any further comments or questions? Okay, we got a motion and a second on the table. Do a roll call vote. Mr. Hensley?
Yes.
Mr. Shaw?
Yes.
Mr. Esposette?
Yes.
Mr. Brubaker?
Yes.
Mr. Bucher?
Yes.
Mr. Raymer?
Yes.
And I vote yes. The motion carries 7-0.
You have something you want to talk about here?
No,
Or we're just gonna go to this?
just go to public comments.
Okay, public comments.
Nick, you good? I thought you were gonna bid on the scores table, that's what I'm sure your shop or something, you need that.
Please state your name for the record because we are live streaming.
I've got a, say that again, Dave?
I said, please state your name for the records and pull your mic up just a little bit so we can hear you. We're live streaming the meeting.
Okay. Matt Burlingame, I have a son that's a sophomore at the high school. Just one, obviously, I think you're wrong about the mandates on the buses still. I think it's pretty clear in the information I sent you that it doesn't apply to school buses, but we'll move on. This is probably not that big of a deal, and I found these numbers the other day, and I thought it was a little interesting, and so it's kind of, we're past this, but I got on the state's dashboard and pulled number of cases for the 4 high schools and junior highs in Wabash County, and looked at the percent of students that have been tested positive this year. And so Manchester junior senior high, 180 cases from their database, divided by 718 students, so 25% of our students contracted COVID-19. Wabash junior senior high, 77 cases out of 937 students, 8.2% positivity rate. Northfield junior senior high, 71 cases divided by 435 students, 16%. In Southwood, 58 cases divided by 378 students, and that was 15.3%. And I was just trying to figure out why there's such a huge discrepancy there. I mean, I know like Southwood and Southwood and Northfield don't have like a town community necessarily like we do, so they don't have that maybe as dense population. But I feel like Wabash is a much bigger town, more population, a denser population than us, and that we're substantially higher in those cases than the other communities. And to put this in a little more perspective, since the September meeting when Mike had talked about the zip code data, I kind of been tracking that, and I haven't looked at it since December, but the 4 or 5 times that I looked at it, and I try to look every couple weeks or so, Manchester 46962 had been consistently lower by 5% than the Wabash zip code. So we're, as a communities, 5% lower consistently all the way through December. Yet we're 25% positivity rate compared to 8.2 for Wabash and 15.3 for Southwood and 16.3 for Northfield. And Northfield and Southwood didn't mask the whole school year, and Wabash did similar to us, I believe. So, I don't know, I thought those numbers were kind of, I don't want to say a triple red flag, but it just really struck me that they were so much higher, so I just want to throw that out there, so. Yeah, Rick?
That was a number of tests taken considered in that. Would it be a possibility that more of our students
Well,
are
if,
testing?
yeah, theoretically, if we have more people testing, then more people would be positive,
Yeah.
but,
I don't know what.
so, thanks.
Can we still do that?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Well, it wasn't on there because it was originally not
Okay, board, I just discovered something here, so we're gonna make an amendment to the agenda for consent items, unless somebody has a objection to it. These were in your packet. We have the minutes from the proposed lease agreement meeting, and this was in your packets. And then allowance of claims, there's some claims in here. Are these from the last meeting? Yes. Okay,
They just weren't signed.
okay.
Oh,
Scratch that. I opened this folder and found a stack of papers, like, wait a minute, where's consent items? Well, we didn't have any. These are, so board, I need you to sign these before you leave, please. Superintendent comments?
We've had a lot of exciting things that have happened recently. Obviously, sports are coming to a conclusion. Our boys swim team just finished up their season. But most notably, Dylan Stroud finished seventh at the state wrestling tournament, which is incredible. I mean, he was a 3-time qualifier, a 2-time placer, and, huge accomplishment for him. I know that it's a lot of work time, and I don't want to steal Mike's thunder because Mike's been working with him a lot longer than the rest of us. So, but commend to, all of them, and then also the with our Science Olympiad team. And lastly, I want to show my appreciation for all the support from community, friends, and family. We did have a team in the polar plunge this last Saturday. It wasn't warm outside, but we had a great time. And so this was the first time that Manchester had entered the polar plunge. It's part of our Champions Together network. That's a part of our unified sports, and part of that's raising money for Special Olympics of Indiana. And Special Olympics of Indiana does send some of that money back to the schools since we sponsor unified football. And so I just want to thank everybody. We did end up raising over $2,000. We did fall short of the Manchester Manchester College alumni team, but we finished second overall, and I want to thank Coach Officer Birch, Mrs. Vogel, and then we had one student athlete who was a part of it. So Peyton Baker was also a part of our team. So it was a lot of fun, and I think it's one of the great things that we have going on in this community, and I was glad we were able to be a part of it.
School board comments.
I would like to, to watch those matches, and the wrestling team's doing quite well, and several sports teams, so kudos to all the athletes. But, see Dylan make it down to state again, and that first match, was really a heartbreaker, 7-5. And yeah, maybe, your first loss of the year, you have a little letdown. Just want to tell him and the rest of the kids, and I got a couple in the Lean Six Sigma class, Mr. Ayers and Mr. France, who several of them had really good seasons, and really an unfortunate outcome for one of them as well. But the tenacity and the work and the stuff that the kids put in here, I've got to, I was sitting there watching that, and it made me wonder, there's a big question in my mind, why Wabash County, why we are represented the way we are, and I think about that a lot, and I look at the effort and the fight that these kids put into things, into their schoolwork, into their grades, and things like me, and I just want to thank them, because that, for an old guy like me, that kind of it just reinvigorates me to think, we gotta fight for what we wanna fight for, you know, and put the same effort for. And I'd like to take a little stab at the group putting the dashboard metrics for the DOE right now. There's one thing that really is still bothering me about schools, and that's the way we rate kids on grades, you know? And Kyle, we've had this conversation about the utilization of some tools we use in industry, you know, called P charts, control charts, to look at all these kids are given, you know, my kids, you know, I always told them you were given something from God, right? Some kids have to work really hard for C's and D's and stuff like that. And I'd like those people to really think about what we're doing and how we're grading students, telling some people, hey, yeah, I'm okay, you know, you're high achiever, fine, right? But there's kids out there working their tail off day in and day out for C's and D's. And I'd like that dashboard, those people putting that dashboard, to think about using some of the tools we use in industry. If we'd use a P chart for every class for these students, there's no better dashboard that could tell you when things are going wrong, and especially when things are going right, when they're making gains and stuff on grading. So, you know, the letter system, it's bothered me for a long time. You know, I've had friends that tell me, you just don't know how lucky you are, you know, and I listen to them and I watch these kids, you know, and I'd just like to take a little stab tonight at that and say, folks, if we really want to help our children, they've all got their own baselines, right? And I know the teachers and the administrators and stuff know this, and that's what they do with the kids, right? But, you know, if we're going to grade kids, if we're going to grade schools, you know, I think there's a better way of doing this and develop their own baselines and their gains. And I know the teachers and administrators know this, but I just wanted to kind of bring that up tonight, so.
I wanted to mention a little bit about our Indianapolis trip. So we got the opportunity to listen to for the two majority leaders in both House and Senate, as well as the minority leaders. And then we had the education committees from leaders from each of those. And then during lunch, we actually had several representatives come around and sit at our tables while we were eating. And you know, one of them struck me really well, and it was got a really big applause actually within the room too. There were about 220 school board members from the entire state there, well attended, and one of them said, you know, we have legislated these schools and regulated these schools so much over the years. Why are we trying to do more? And that really hit home to me. And obviously, that person got a major applause because everybody feels the same way about it. And that person happened to be one of the minority leaders in the Senate, I believe. But so keep on the legislators about House Bill 1134 and a couple of other things they're going through for schools. And we've had enough, and more, it's more stress for the teachers, the admins, and it ultimately goes down right to the students. So thank you.
Anybody else?
Yeah, I think I've said it before, I'm just always grateful that we have board members committed to take the time to go down and spend time in Indianapolis, and I appreciate hearing the comments. So thank you both for doing that.
I would, since Robert brought that up, you know, one thing that I'll stress to legislators is the best thing you can do is the same thing we do in multiple industries, and that's incentivize continuous improvement. You know, the best solution comes from within. When the solution comes within, people own it. When external people come in and try, you know, there's got to be heavy communication to write legislation that people are going to agree upon. And it just, you know, a little bit of that was disheartening, the conflict through it all, right? Because if we've got our mind on our future, we've got our mind on our children, you know, and it shouldn't be that freaking hard to get along and come up with solutions, so.
Anybody else? I would just ask the board, you know, we got snowed out on our board training. I did take part in the call, and it is recorded on their website. I would encourage all of you to at least sit through the first half of it until the first break. There's some really good information in there that I think could benefit all of us. And the other thing, to Mike's comment and Robert's, you know, and Rick's, I do appreciate you guys going down. I wasn't able to go. But I would point out that I believe in 2003 or maybe before, there's a federal amendment, it's called the Hatch Amendment, that the idea behind 1134 is already federal law and it's already in our policy. So I'm completely befuddled at what the legislators are trying to do with 1134. So if you want local school board control, I encourage everybody watching, everybody sitting here, reach out to Mr. Snow and the rest of the legislators and let them know what you think about this, because, you know, here's federal law that says that you're already entitled to the things that they're talking about. So that's all I have. Oh, wait, one more thing. I would like to extend a thank you to all the administrators, Tanya, Kyle, for all the extra work in the last couple of weeks. I know it's been pretty stressful, so unless anybody else got anything, I'd entertain a motion to adjourn. Mr. Hensley, Mr. Brubaker, all in favor?